Hello fellow human, hope you guys have a great day and let's read some r/entitled parent stories. To the first one. Mom uses my locked private diary and only true safe space as her daily reading material. When I was a preteen, my mom gifted me a diary with a tiny lock and keys. I hid the keys, taped them in hidden places, and began using it almost immediately. I was a bookworm and loved reading and writing. I was also quite neglected as a child, so my diary was the only place I could express myself and feel heard. I'd read my last entries, and that allowed me to reflect my own thoughts and actions and learn from past situations. It was honestly really great for my mental health. For a time, my mood and mental health improved. Time passed. I couldn't tell you how long, probably a few months. Shortly after I wrote an entry talking about my first wet dream, a few seconds of feet peeking out of bed sheets, nothing truly not safe for work, my mom got furious at me and confronted me, full on screaming. She sat me in the living room as she towered over me, screaming at my face, asking me if I thought this was normal, that I was having depraved thoughts and no child my age should have. For a preteen? Like, really? It was actually perfectly normal. That I had promised no intercourse before marriage when I was 5 years old, and that this was clearly going against my word that I was, etc. I tried to defend myself at first in protest, not understanding how she even knew about it, but she took out the unlocked diary as proof of my depravity, and my attempts at defending myself, it was just a wet dream, just fueled her anger even more. I sat there silently crying, answering quietly whatever she wanted me to say to whatever she asked because nothing else would stop her escalation of screaming. I felt betrayed. My locked diary was my only safe place in that home. I was careful with what I wrote in my diary after that incident and set a few tests to check if I was still having my locked diary read without my knowledge or consent. I did this by writing about innocuous incidents in a way that could have sounded like it was more than it was, knowing it would prompt questions out of curiosity. Every time, it didn't take more than 2 days for the questions to come. Turns out, she'd hunt for my diary's keys and read it regularly. Needless to say, I stopped using my diary. My only breathing space had been turned against me. I significantly closed myself off from everyone. I felt even my diary could betray me, then people even less. It was hard not writing. I no longer had an outlet for emotional or psychological relief, but I really couldn't trust anything anymore. After a week or two without any new entries, my mom asked why I had stopped using my diary. If I had dared, I could have rolled my eyes and asked, "What do you think?" But I knew better than to attract attention to myself and simply said I had lost interest into such a thing. What you can do is to keep 2 separate diaries with one fake one making up stories about your daily life. The second story. Karen secretly films me jogging and shows the video to my boss. I recently had an emergency appendectomy and recovery has been slow. I had to take time off of my own athletics, but worse, from coaching in the kids' sports program I'm involved with. The experience made me step back and realize I really built my whole identity around being active and healthy, so the hit my physical abilities took as a result of being sick, plus the healing process had made me feel lost. I've been working to regain the joy I used to experience from exercise without going, "Oh, you used to be so much faster with that," or "Your technique used to be so much stronger," or "You don't fit in anymore," or whatever else, and just enjoy myself regardless of the level I'm at. But, ironically, the anxiety about not being able to do what I used to has made regaining those abilities difficult. It made me self-conscious about exercising in public spaces, but I was starting to finally get over it as friends convinced me the source of the concerns were all in my head. There's no way to get it back other than training, so despite the anxiety, I started running again, as soon as the doctors approved it. I went to the local track and just did a few slow laps each morning, building up speed every few days, and I've only just been authorized to add some sprints and body weight strength training to the mix. Occasionally, there were other people at the track, but I didn't really notice because I run with headphones on and try to zone out in these latter sessions. But little did I know, my friends were wrong. It was not all in my head. I was being watched. And more than that, I was being judged. My absolute catastrophe level worst nightmare at this stage of building back my strength and speed. On Friday, I was setting up for practice at the kids program and the head coach asked me into his office because a parent had a complaint. A parent I didn't know too well, Karen, was there and he said she had specific complaints about me. The meeting almost didn't happen because Karen's initial refusal to put on a mask required in our facilities for now, but eventually her desire to tell on me for whatever she thought she had on me overrode her freedoms to infect everyone. I was a bit nervous, as anyone is being called to meet with their boss over a complaint, but I figured it was a classic case of, my kid should start more, or, I know my kid tried out as a midfielder, but I want him or her to switch to defense. That kind of rules don't apply to me thing. But instead, I sit down in the office and Karen is playing my boss a video of me running on the track that she just filmed from afar. It's surrounded by stadium-style risers. I was horrified, both because no one is ever totally used to seeing themselves on video and because I was just embarrassed about how slow I was. But most importantly because why was a virtual stranger, I'd met her personally maybe 4 times like ever, filming me while I run on my own time at a private facility. She then went on to explain that her 8-year-old son, one of the players on my squad, was lapping me in the video and insisting the coaches need to hold themselves to higher athletic standards than the young players if they want to prepare them for college teams. Again, her son is 8. Apparently, her son would sometimes be running on the track while her older child was practicing on a nearby field. I never noticed, the kid is still relatively new, and I don't pay much attention to other people on the track. My boss patiently but firmly explained to Karen that my physical abilities are not my parents' concerns and all personnel are closely managed by the head coaches who understand each unique situation and what's appropriate, and that her son wouldn't be impacted. Karen then went on to say me being out of shape was probably connected to why I'd been taking so much time off lately. Technically yes, it is because I was in the hospital? And complaining that the personnel changeover isn't good for the kids. My boss, again, reiterated that the head coaches hadn't changed or taken any time off and that I was still one of the most skilled in the area I instruct, so this was not her concern. She asked if there was someone else she could speak to, but he explained that he was the owner and the founder of this program, so no, there was not. I knew my boss was intentionally avoiding saying what happened to me or even alluding to a health issue, protecting my privacy, but I figured maybe being transparent with her would show her how ridiculous she was being and keep her tuition dollars in our program during a difficult time for sports clubs. But when I explained, she just turned to the boss and said, well, maybe you should just furlough her until she's healed and bring on a healthy coach in the meantime. Because my son needs someone out there who can keep up with him. My boss respected what I was trying to do, but made clear we weren't going to further with that strategy to avoid setting a precedent of sharing coaches' personal circumstances. Telling her why people take their time off or what their health status may be is not her concern, because the program manages that and makes appropriate decisions. She kept kicking up a fuss, but the coach finally told her he had to get back out on the field, back to her son and everyone else's kids. She started physically leaving, but continued fussing about how she was not satisfied and would not be recommending us to other parents. Pro tip: not the way to conduct yourself with the people who make recommendations to scouts concerning family culture/team interaction. The coach wasn't preparing to leave. Instead, he stopped her in her tracks to tell her that if she was found to be surveilling or otherwise harassing any staff member again, she would be perma-banned from the program. No games or practices, no team social events, no presence in our buildings, and no clemency. So that was pretty satisfying. Her son is good, average kid, and I'm glad the consequences were focused on booting her out rather than limiting his opportunities to have fun playing. So then we went out and had a great, happy, safe practice. This was still a pretty upsetting event for me personally though, and I will never unsee that discouraging video of me running, but it was ultimately reassuring to know that the other staff had my back. Leaving Karen in the dust is just another step on my road to recovery. Well, I love how your boss really got your back this time. Hopefully, Karen isn't gonna be a setback to your recovery. The third story. My parents cut my beard when I was sleeping. My parents had a strict clean shave policy when I was growing up, but now I'm an adult and now lives on my own. I had grown kinda long French beard during the COVID lockdown and was visiting my family once the travel restrictions were relaxed. My parents were horrified seeing my beard and they asked me to shave it because people might think I have tarnished my family's reputation. I basically tell them to screw off and mind about their pubes rather than my beard. Today, I was sleeping on the couch and my mom cut my beard off and now it's an ugly mess and I have no option but to shave it off. And I can't ducking leave this place as I'm under 14-day home quarantine as I traveled from another state and I feel they have one for now. Well, if you can handle leaving it like that until you leave, it would probably upset them even more. Petty revenge. The fourth one. My parents took me out to dinner to question my political views. My parents started nagging me about voting. I told them I was going to. Then they keep bugging me about who I'm voting for. I shut them down, and as we were leaving the restaurant, my father yelled, "If you love us, you will vote for Trump." Of course, everyone in the restaurant thought this was hilarious. Like, why would people really pressure or force others to vote for someone they hate? Like, why? The fifth story. Entitled mom won't watch her kids, they climb into the pasture with my horses. So, I've referenced this story a couple of times to people and decided that I'll tell them the full tale. I live in a rural neighborhood, everyone's got 3 to 8 acres, so we're all pretty spaced out. I live on 5 acres and my nearest neighbors are a sweet elderly couple about 1 acre from me. They are perfect. The husband does the yard work as a hobby and his wife bakes. We have a nice agreement where if I need something big, chainsawed, he takes the wood down and uses it for the fireplace. In exchange, I trade recipes and bake with his wife. Honestly, they just like the company. I own my own home, have 2 horses, a cat, and recently my mom had also moved in because she was in a financial trouble. I'm happy to help her as she is a good company, and I'd do anything for her. And then everything changed when COVID attacked. So here's where things go south. My neighbor's son and his family, wife and 2 girls, 4 and 7, live in a near city and they didn't feel safe. I don't blame them, and because my neighbors are saints, they opened their home and moved right in. Up until this point, I was the youngest person in the neighborhood at 29, so having kids wander around isn't new for everyone. At first, it was no big issue. They stayed inside, got settled, maybe because they were good kids? Well, total long shot, I know, but a girl can hope. So, one morning, I'm letting my horses out into the front pasture, a Clydesdale and a Welsh pony, and I hear the most high-pitched squealing from next door. It was so shrill, my Clydesdale second-guessed going outside, but cautiously proceeded only to be met with more squeals. I pop my head out, and the 2 girls are literally losing their minds. And I get it, little white pony and the horse from Brave, but still, they are large animals. They don't know, so they should have the sense not to approach, right? Puh. Not a snowball chance in hell. These kids sprint to the fence shrieking. The pony runs around in panic, and the Clydesdale stands there with the same WTF look I've got on my face. Then, the 4-year-old starts to go under the fence. Oh, hell no. Oh, don't you dare climb under that fence. Said firmly and admittedly kinda harsh, but I'll be damned if I have my horses mow over a kid. I walk over to them, and they look like they're about to cry, but I explain firmly that they are big animals and could hurt them easily and never to go over or under the fence. They go home, I clean the stalls. An hour in, I hear someone banging on my home's door. I can see through my barn's hatch door my mom and the kids are having a conversation. The kid's mom then storms down to the barn. I've never met this lady, but I know an entitled parent when I see one. Joy of joys. She starts going off on me. How dare you make my kids cry? They just wanted to see the ponies, blah blah blah. But when she takes a breath, I get my point across. Ma'am, your youngest was crawling under the fence towards 2 large animals none of you know. That Clydesdale is a 2,000-pound draft horse. He can literally crush you, not feel it, and do permanent damage. The pony looks cute, but needs an experienced hand as he's very untrustworthy, flighty, and has a tendency to bite. Your children are not allowed to be near them without my consent and heavy supervision, and never allowed in the pasture with them. Do you understand? She starts ranting about, well, if they're so dangerous, why do you have them? Are you even allowed to have them? I should call animal control. That crap. Well, first, they're my personal horses. Yes, I'm allowed to have them. And second, your kids trespass on my property. I'm trying to keep them safe. And third, this is not a petting zoo. She huffs off and I continue work. Later that evening, when the husband gets home, I explain what happened. He is understandably alarmed and explain how dangerous that situation is. He agrees. Not that my horses are aggressive, mind you, but it's inherently dangerous in general. You've got a 50 to 200 pound human versus a 800 to 2,000 pound horse. If you don't know what you're doing, you can be seriously injured. Pure physics. So I'm optimistic with his reaction, but no, he's often not home, so I stay cautious. Later in the next week, I'm working from home and suddenly I hear screaming. Not excited screaming, scared little kid screaming. I rush outside and the 4-year-old is bawling in the middle of the pasture with a pony doing laps around the perimeter of the fence as my Clydesdale slowly approached the little girl. The 7-year-old is crying outside the fence and calling for her mom, but clearly their mom is not watching them. My initial terror recedes a bit because my Clydesdale is essentially a golden retriever in a horse's body. Sweetest pushover in the world. He's gingerly approaching her in a slow, friendly way and being non-threatening as he can. And with him so close, the pony won't rush them. He's probably 3 steps from her, but I yell for him to halt, and like a good boy he does. I make my way in with them and start asking the girl questions like, "Are you hurt?" Being paramount, she's not, but she's clearly scared, so I pick her up and walk out, making my Clydesdale heel to me just in case the pony gets a dumb idea. The mom is still nowhere in sight, so I take them to my neighbor. What precedes is about 30 minutes of screaming and crying. The girl's mother was the one to open the door. She starts screaming at me and firing off questions before my neighbors intervene. I tell everyone exactly what happened and my elderly neighbors blew up at her, not at me. They screamed at her for being so irresponsible and negligent, and how could they have been hurt? The mom tried throwing the blame on me, but they weren't having it. My neighbors apologized profusely, and I go about my day until the husband gets home. He came by and apologized too, for his family behavior and especially the behavior of his wife. I accepted it and said I understood. They're little girls. I too know the allure of magnificent fluffy horses. The mom was at fault for not watching the kids. I'm just glad everyone was okay. The girls were still really shook up, so I extended an olive branch because, well, I was an overexcited kid who liked horses once too. Just like a horse mom who knew what she was doing. And I didn't want this to completely traumatize them for being around horses. So the next day, I probably introduced them to my Clydesdale, with him in his stall, with the inside hatch open and the girls being supervised by their father and me. Safe in the barn, they loved it. Clydesdale loved the attention. Everyone is happy, right? Well, except for the mom, who took my olive branch as an offer to teach them horseback riding, to give them free lessons and other crap. But her husband shot it down hard, and presumably so did my neighbors. Since then, it's been quiet. I did, however, install a second electrical wire on the bottom, not just on top, just in case. And yes, they did test it. 7-year-old got zapped pretty good and got in trouble with her dad. Aside from that, there have been no incidents other than them wanted to pet them when I drop evening feed once in a while. Here's hoping it stays peaceful, but seriously, don't go up to animals you don't know. Well, it's good to see that your neighbor stood up for you. So many people love to back up an entitled parent and it leads to entitled kids. That's it for today, fellow humans. Thanks for watching. Be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys next time.